Hello and welcome back to another episode of Professional Spotlight, joined today by Dennis Mieles. We are here in Manta. You can see the views behind us, absolutely stunning, beautiful day here in Manta, Ecuador. Jesse Bayer, Abundant Living Ecuador. We are a real estate and development company located in Southern Ecuador. Dennis is a developer, is a real estate agent as well, does a little farming, a man of many trades, a good friend of mine, so somebody I'm happy to know and really happy to bring you guys some of his knowledge, some of the coastal knowledge. Most of our videos obviously are based in the Loja, Vilcabamba area. That's where we mostly operate. We are in the process of actually expanding some of our operations, so we may be dipping our toes in a bit more on the coast. Dennis lives in Manta. He's originally from Puerto Viejo. As I said, local developer, builder, has a wood farm amongst other things, lumber farm I should say, and has some interesting investment opportunities as well. But as a real estate agent here, he can talk about the market, he can talk about life here. Dennis lived in Germany for a number of years as well, fluent English speaker. All around good guy, so happy to be joined. Dennis, thanks for taking the time today, and welcome.
Thank you, Jesse, and hi to everybody, and thanks for watching us. Very nice introduction, Jesse. Made me feel very well.
So Dennis, let's just start with some general stuff on Manta. So, when I talk about Loja, right, and I think Loja is probably the most livable city in Ecuador, but Manta and Loja are definitely my two favorite cities in Ecuador by far. I'm not a huge fan of Quito and Guayaquil. Cuenca is nice, but it's freezing cold. It's really, for me, Loja and Manta that are the two most attractive places if you're looking for a city. What I love about Loja is it's sort of the culture, the quality of life, the safety. It's a very slow-paced city. You can kind of park everywhere. People are very trusting. Everyone knows each other. These are kind of some of the things I really like about Loja. When I come to Manta, it's a very different experience, right? It's a coastal city. It's a little bit faster paced, but it's still not a huge city. It's not as safe as Loja, but still pretty safe. The food is great in Manta. I really enjoy the food here. Obviously, you've got the beach, and you're right in the middle of the coast, right in central Ecuador. There's beautiful developments here, beautiful construction. It's a very interesting area. There's a lot of development opportunities in the area. That's something I know you take advantage of, and we've been looking at as well. It's really an interesting city. It's become something of a hotspot for foreigners as well. So if you were to characterize sort of life in Manta and what life looks like for somebody maybe considering moving overseas, how would you characterize it?
Well, Manta, I have to say, it is a very young city. What you have described happened probably in the past 10 years, all this development. Therefore, that's one of the reasons why it is still a good city to invest. Before that, Manta was considered a city for fishermen, and it's still considered the world capital of tuna. So we are, according to some numbers that I was reading, the city that exports the largest amount of tuna to Europe from South America, from Latin America in this case. So that has been the city in the past 20 years. But since we have the American base, this city became a little bit of an attracting city for foreigners.
First, let me just jump in there. So he's referring to a military base. So the U.S. used to have a military base here, which left when?
They left in 2006, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so for some years prior to 2006. Just to clarify, go ahead and continue.
Yeah. So because of that reason, several people start moving for working purposes. But at the same time, because of the weather conditions and the location, as you already mentioned, their family and their friends start being attracted also to Manta, and that's how people, foreigners in this case, they got attracted to the city. And at the same time, there was this booming of people moving to South America because of course in North America in general. But ever since the city became of magnet for tourists and also retirees, we have a large community of expats here. Most of them are living in the area where we are now, which is surrounded by restaurants. So describing a little bit a normal day of the life that is in Manta. It's a young city. You can walk easily to anywhere. Everything is very close. It's a safe city. We were talking a little bit earlier about that. You have to be careful no matter where you are in South America of being in certain neighborhoods and also the time, but that will happen also in a European city, a large European city. So in general, there are some considerations, but you can walk anywhere and it's a good place to be. It's a very sunny place, as you can see. Several opportunities for investment, and I'm talking about real estate. It's just that as the city is growing, there are opportunities for people interested on tourism, gastronomy, and arts as well. So the city is in this almost reaching the point where it's becoming a little bit of a small metropolis, I would say.
Yeah, no, I've noticed that too, and I guess there's plans to expand the airport. What do you know about that?
Yes, not only to expand the airport, well, we actually have one of the largest fields in South America because also the American base that we had. But what we're trying to do, or the city is trying to do at the moment, is to make more connections. We're starting very soon with a direct connection to Manta, Galapagos. At the moment, we only have connections with Quito. But also they were talking about this Pacific corridor, they call it, which is a connection from Santiago de Chile, Manta, and LA, Los Angeles. I don't know when that happened, but that's something that people are talking about, and it seems that it's going to happen. A little bit difficult to say when exactly, but that will definitely attract even more people. And also the Pacific corridor includes another flight to Tahiti in the South Pacific area.
Okay, sorry guys, fiddling with the mic here. Yeah, okay, so it sounds like Manta has really grown a lot and changed a lot in the last 10-15 years. I guess a lot of Ecuador, that's probably true. Where do you see Manta going from here? Have you seen, I guess there's been a large influx of expats in recent years. I assume that will continue. I don't see why it wouldn't. The city's expanding a lot. I guess we'll continue to see that. I don't know, where do you see let's talk a little bit, I guess, about the real estate market in that context. Where was the real estate market, let's say, 5 years ago? Where is it today? Where do you see it in 5 years from now?
Well, 5 years ago, exactly 5 years ago, we had a little bit of a plateau we reached after the earthquake. We didn't mention that, but we experienced a 7.8 earthquake in 2016. So before that, the city was growing in terms of real estate, as you said, has a sustained growth, and then it stopped. Recently, after, I would say 2 years after the earthquake, we start recouping again the rhythm that we had before. So at the moment, what you can see is that the city is, in terms of real estate, is changing a little bit. Also because of the pandemic, the expectations of people change. So now the city is growing in the outskirts of the city. People are expecting wider spaces, not so much in compounds area, and that has also made the city enlarge. The municipality in this case extend the services. So what I can see in the next 5 years is a sustained growth toward the south of the city that we visited a little bit earlier. I can see also expand on the services that we didn't have before. Some services like international cuisine, let's say, because we have very good food, but local food. Good. That's what we had 6-7 years ago, but now you can go and experience some international cuisine just a few minutes away from here. I also see expanding in terms of connections, not only because of the airport, but also with buses. Cuenca, you already mentioned, is a city that is also attracting people, so we're going to have direct connections, buses in this case, that we didn't have before to Cuenca. So we will have also not only the foreigners coming, because it was a city that was considered for foreigners at some point, but something that I have noticed, and it keeps happening, is people from Quito and Cuenca and some other larger cities are moving and are starting to consider this as a vacation
destination.
Yes, exactly. And weekends you should see there's a lot of people coming from the highlands, and that's what's happening, and it will continue happening. So now the market that we had that was mostly foreigners buying in the residential areas, Now it's getting a little bit even, so 50-50 foreigners and Ecuadorians, but not so much locals, but people from the highlands.
Yeah, and I guess you also sell a lot. You do a lot of business outside of the city, right?
Mostly outside of the city.
Yeah, so you're dealing with a lot of rural properties, a lot of beachfront properties.
Exactly.
Manta is an interesting city too because, again, it's a relatively small city, about 250,000 people or so. The larger area is much bigger than that population-wise, but it's a relatively small city. As soon as you get out of the city, you're rural, right? So it's not one of those cities that has tons of suburbs and sprawl as you get out. If you go south, you get out of the city, you're in very rural areas immediately. And then both north and south, there's all these little sort of fishing villages or small coastal towns up and down the coast that are very pleasant. We come down and we rent for a month at a time, usually in some of these towns, and really enjoy the vacation. The weather, as you go south, is not always great. As you go north, is always great. Manta, for the most part, is great weather year-round. Talk a little bit about both some of the beachfront opportunities, and then we'll touch a little bit as well on some of the larger sort of fincas and agricultural opportunities on the coast in this area.
Well, as you already mentioned, as soon as you leave the city, there's several rural areas. Opportunities there, well, there's still plenty of opportunities if you leave the city. Everything depends on what you're looking for, of course. If you want to live in the surrounding area, which is not that far, I have to clarify that. When we say out of the city, it's just 10-15 minutes away from here. The city itself, the urban area is very compact, as Jesse already mentioned. But in the south area, the rural areas are very open and very wide. So in the area of San Lorenzo, still a lot of opportunities. Beachfront properties, of course.
And San Lorenzo is about 20 minutes?
Yes, 20 minutes.
Yeah,
20 minutes from
20
here.
minutes
It's
south.
a very, very beautiful beach. It has a nice cape. The weather is a little bit different because it's unbelievable, but Manta is very diverse in terms of climate as well. If you drive 15 minutes south, you have a rainforest. It seems you're in the middle of the jungle. And then after that, it's a little bit more, it's a little bit colder and misty sometimes, but it's still very nice. So it has an opportunity for everybody because probably some people don't like the weather that we're experiencing now because it's very sunny, sometimes too warm. So you can go south and it's a little bit cooler. So still opportunities. I would say in terms of cost of living, it's of course cheaper if you go outside. Most of the fishing villages that Jesse was talking about, they sell locally their own fishing of the day. So of course that's might be very attractive for some people, but at the same time it's very affordable to do your shopping or your market if you are in one of those villages. Regarding to agricultural opportunities, well, this province is Manabí and it's considered one of the most productive provinces in the country. So if you go in east direction towards Puerto Viejo, yes, definitely several opportunities. The difference that you will find between the price of beachfront lot to agricultural land is tremendous.
Yeah.
Well, you know it now. It's day and night totally. A price per square meter in Manta, for instance, or outside of Manta can be a couple $100, and if you go to the inland, the price of a hectare can be $1,500, but a hectare, not exactly a square meter.
Right.
And of course, as I said, it's a very fertile area. Depending on what you are looking for, you will find within the province, you will find agricultural opportunities, residential on the beach, or even residential on the countryside, of course, because this is also a tendency after the pandemic. Many people are having their weekend farms just to grow their own vegetables and fruits. So that's also a tendency that we are experiencing, and I guess around the world in general.
Yeah.
And yes, so there you have both sides of the coins: countryside, beach life.
Yeah. So that's interesting, really, also from an investor's perspective, right? It's like you can come down to some of these areas. It's true in the Amazonian region. It's true in some of the southern mountain regions, and it's true inland on the coast in some of these areas you're talking about, where you can find this really fertile farmland for 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 a hectare, that are just, you know, really ideal for lots of different kinds of crops. So there's certainly those kinds of areas here as well. And then on the beachfront side, you know, you mentioned can be $200-300 a square meter, certainly closer to the city. As you get further out, you know, prices go quite a bit down from there as well. So there's interesting opportunities there as well for residential developments and, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. You know, you mentioned cost of living. I wanted to touch on that for a minute. So you know, we've done a lot of videos on cost of living. People probably have something of an idea in Ecuador in general. Ecuador is very inexpensive. I usually use a rule of about 4 or 5 to 1 compared to, at least compared to a decent sized city in the US, as far as your cost of living here to there, or what, you know, a dollar means here versus there. You know, we just, So I've noticed Manta is a little more expensive than Loja as far as the restaurants, for example, and certain things like that. But I don't know much about the cost of living here overall. So what is, you know, if I wanted to rent, for example, a nice apartment, let's say a 2-bedroom apartment in Manta, what would that cost me per month, ballpark, or what kind of range would I be looking at?
Well, that's it can vary, definitely. It depends on where you want to be. Of course, if you want to have rent a beachfront apartment, if you are in the first line, it might change depending on the neighborhood, because we have different neighborhoods.
Sure.
There are beachfront in the city, but it can range from $600, I would say, up to $1,500, depending if it's in the area that is more expensive, which is south. So it might change. Depend. Yeah.
So like $600 to $1,500 a month will get you a beautiful, something really nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to say something. If it's $600, it doesn't mean that it's not nice, because you always have this view. We're actually in a neighborhood right now which is not the most expensive. Nevertheless, you have this view, and it's a very nice, very convenient location. So you still will have a very good quality of life, or well, a good apartment. It just depends on the location. Because if you go to the one that costs $1,500, it's because it's probably close to the shopping mall or to some nice and fancy restaurants. Whereas if you are on the other side, you're in a nice neighborhood, but you have to walk a few minutes to the main attractions. So it depends on that.
Yeah, and I've definitely noticed in Manta, there's really distinct. I mean, this is true everywhere in the world, including Loja and everywhere else, but there's really almost more distinct neighborhoods here, you know, where it's like you're in one neighborhood and you can see there's big money in that neighborhood, whereas, you know, then you're in another neighborhood and there isn't, right? There definitely seems to be more going on here economically, a lot more activity. You mentioned the tuna. There's huge tuna factories. There's a golf course, you know, relatively nice golf course, I guess about 15 minutes or so from the city. Not a beachfront golf course, which is too bad, but still a good-looking golf course.
Someday,
right?
Yeah.
And there's only, I mean, it's one of only, I think, like 5 golf courses in Ecuador, something like that. So that's not the most common thing, but there's definitely a lot going on here. I would say that the velocity of money, you know, in Manta is much faster than what I'm used to, you know, in the Sierra in Loja. Dennis was letting me know that I thought maybe this was just sort of Ecuadorian culture in general, but I realized it isn't. It's mountain culture. That we were joking around the other day about when, you know, folks from the mountains come to do business on the coast.
Oh, yes.
It's a little bit, the people on the coast are like, uh-oh, because they're going to take a long time to make a decision, and they're going to want to sort of bargain every last dollar, which is interesting, because you can see that here in Manta. You can see there's more activity, right? There's more going on financially, economically. There's more activity. There's more development. There's tennis clubs, for example, all over the city. There's high-end restaurants that are really good. You know, there's really good food here. It's an interesting city that way. So, okay, so I know you sell real estate, obviously. I know you have a lumber farm, a wood farm, teak, right?
Teak farm, exactly.
Which I'm interested in hearing about. and then you do some construction and some residential development as well. So let's talk about some of that stuff. We covered a little bit the real estate. Again, you work more in rural areas, so if people want to come down, find a sort of a beachfront lot or a piece of farmland or things of that nature, you can help them with that. Development properties as well. I know you do a lot of business finding development properties for people. So obviously, people can get in touch with you on that. But as far as some of the agricultural stuff, I don't know how well you know agriculture outside of the lumber, but at least the teak. What's it like? What's it like being being a lumber? I don't even know what they call it. Lumber farmer. I mean, what do they call it? Growing. What's it like growing teak in Ecuador or those kinds of businesses?
Well, I have to be very honest. This was a little bit of an accident and a trial. I wasn't even living in the country when I started with that business. I just found cheap land in the countryside, and I didn't know what to do with that. I wasn't even living in the country, and it was my father's suggestion. And he said, "Well, you can start planting trees or doing some plantation." And I was thinking, okay, what can I do in order to use that land, but it doesn't. I don't have to be there all the time because I wasn't even living in the country. So that's how I end up with teak, because supposedly you had to wait 15 years. Nevertheless, it has been one of my best investments because the cost of land plus the cost of planting trees was very low. Plus the trees, you have to take care of them the first 3 years maybe, and afterwards they just grow on their own, and you have a super high return of, I was calculating, like 300% of what you sounds crazy numbers, but that's how you pretty much make in this business. The only thing is that you have to, not many people get into this business because people that are in the countryside, they don't have the income to survive for 15 years without having a constant or a monthly income.
Sure.
So that's why it's not that exploded. But people who usually do that, they have a monthly income or they have a backup job, if you want to call it that way. And then you can also invest on land and also investing in wood. There are some other opportunities, but in my case, investing in teak has been great so far. And because I was also in the construction market, what I'm doing now that I start harvesting some of the wood, I use it for my own construction because I noticed that you have always two chances. You can export it, which is very profitable, but also the process of exporting is time consuming. Bureaucracy in Ecuador, well, you have experienced it probably. It can take a little bit until you complete all the paperwork. But in my case, that I'm in the construction business, I use part of the wood as for finishing for building, and it has been great. That's what I'm doing as well. I'm trying to build, in this case, more sustainable or ecological structure, so I use a lot of wood. Not only because it's a tendency around the world, but also because it's what I'm producing. So that way I can integrate one business with the other. Because at the beginning, I felt that I was dispersed. I had a teak farm on one side that I knew that eventually was going to produce, and then I had the real estate business and construction, but I didn't know how to integrate it. So that's how I went to this ecological or sustainable construction that I'm trying to do at the moment.
So if I want to build on the coast, and I think prices on some materials have gone up a little bit here recently because of some of the supply chain issues, but if I want to build here on the coast, let's say I buy a beachfront lot or something, and I want to build my house. What kind of range are we looking at? Price per square meter to build.
Price per square meter, that is very subjective, and always keep in mind that most of the impact on your price per square meter will be related to the finishing.
Sure.
You can of course buy some tiles that have been produced in Ecuador for a good price, or you can go and buy some tiles that are imported from Italy. So that changes totally the price per square meter. But in a range, being very realistic, you can go anywhere from $800 per square meter, that will be $80 per square feet, to be more in square feet, up to $1,000, $1,100 per square meter. That's a range.
Okay, and that's for. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know the coast is a little more expensive than the Sierra for some of that stuff because they have all the anti-seismic, regulations, but also just you need to build that way here.
Yes.
So that range is a little lower in the Sierra, which we've talked about, of course, on the channel a lot. But I assume that sort of 800 to 1100 or something like that range, that's for sort of high-end construction, or is that for?
Yeah, high-end construction.
Yeah.
On the other side, not only the tremors or earthquake, but also we're beachfront, and the weather here is very, very aggressive sometimes. The wind and the salt. So, for instance, for windows, you cannot use any kind of windows. You have to consider that, or any type of metal that you're going to use. It has to be stainless. Of course, that increases your price per square meter, and that's a consideration when you're building on the coast. So that could be one of the reasons as well, about the difference between highlands and coast when it comes about construction.
You mentioned, or I guess I mentioned in the intro, that you lived in Germany for a number of years. I've never lived in Germany. I haven't even traveled a whole lot in Europe. I've been a couple of places there, but if you had, having had that experience of living in Germany, being from Ecuador, moving back to Ecuador, what kind, talk a little bit about the culture stuff. Like how different are those cultures? If I'm moving here, let's say from the States or Germany or wherever, am I going to have huge culture shock? What kind of maybe advice would you give people? But just talk about maybe some of those differences between the cultures.
Well, there's definitely cultures, technological difference, of course, cultural differences, of course. But I think that is not, I wouldn't call it a shock. No, I wouldn't say that there will be a shock, really. Of course, for somebody that goes from Latin America to Germany, particularly, which is considered a very punctual country, you have to be very considerate of that. I think for people coming to Latin America, they already know what to expect. Now we have all kind of information on the internet, so you know what to really expect. Something that I have to mention about differences or opportunities in these cases, in my case, the fact that I was living out, you can look, we already mentioned a little bit about this. When you look to Latin America, you see so many opportunities because you have been living in a country that is already developed, and you see what you're lacking in your own country. So it's unbelievable. You're outside and you see, oh, wow, we're lacking this, we're missing that. And sometimes you don't really need to come up with a very innovative idea to be successful in Ecuador. In this case, you just have to adapt some ideas that you might have seen when you're living out of Ecuador, because again, we're just growing. So a lot of things are already happening in Europe or in North America, they haven't happened here. So if you start early, of course you're gonna have a very good business. So one of the things that I saw, getting back to your question, is that living there, for most of the people that come here, what they see are opportunities, because there are things that we don't have and they have already experienced in their own country. So they're expecting to have some services that they had back home and we don't have them here. So for those that have entrepreneurial spirit, there are plenty of opportunities in terms of services as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I'm very entrepreneurially minded, and it's mind-blowing in Ecuador just how many opportunities there are in all kinds of things, right? In services, in importing things, in building things, in agriculture and development, big time. There's just large sections of the economy and the country that just are not exploited, or not, they're not really being developed. And it's just, there's nothing. Sometimes I think people hear that, right, and they think, oh, you guys are gonna ruin this paradise or something like that. But it's not that way at all, right? There's a lot of places that when somebody goes in and they start to create some economic activity there, it brings a lot to the local economy. It starts to bring jobs, people have work, there's trade that starts to happen. It's really beneficial to the country, to the area overall, when there's a little bit more economic activity in some of these places where there isn't a whole lot, now. It's really an interesting country from that perspective. Okay, Well, is there any sort of tips and advice or anything that I've kind of left out here that you want to touch on that we haven't talked about yet?
Not that I can think of, but as something that I should mention, if you've never been to Ecuador, it's always good to have, before making any investment decision, what I always recommend my friends is come, experience it before you make any decision. Because Ecuador is a beautiful country, of course, but I also have experience of people that have different expectations that what they find here. So it's always good to come on a holiday and experience it. You will like it, of course. It's different having a holiday than living here, but in any case, it will give you a general idea, an insight of what is living in Ecuador.
Yeah, and also I should mention too, I'm going to put out a little video of a property that Dennis has. It's a development opportunity. He may be looking, or he is looking for some investment capital potentially for that project. It's really an interesting idea. I'll describe a little bit what I know of it, and then Dennis can talk about it as well. But as Dennis mentioned, in Manta, and again, I'm not super experienced in this market, but I've been here long enough to sort of get my bearings, and being sort of a real estate investor, I get my bearings quickly. The north of the city is definitely not as nice. The south of the city tends to be where the money is and where the nicer developments are, both residential and commercial. The nice mall, for example, is in the south, and all the nice developments and apartment buildings and all that kind of stuff, restaurants, are in the south. Again, the city sort of ends very abruptly, right? So you're kind of in the city and then you're out of the city. And as soon as you're out of the city, there's only a couple of little sort of somewhat developed, slightly developed areas as you're going out of the city. Santa Marianita has developed a lot in the last years. But there's a piece of land that Dennis has that's just before Santa Marianita. It's in an area called
San Mateo.
San Mateo, thank you. It's up high. I'll put a little video out. I'll try to link it as well. We were just out there an hour ago looking at it. And he's got a really interesting idea for a sort of mixed-use development, commercial with some residential in there. So if you're an investor looking for a new project, this might be an interesting fit. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I just wanted to explain a little bit what I said to you. Manta has grown mostly to the south area, and most of the developers that have been investing in this area, they have considered only the residential side of the city. But it's an area that, in terms of commercial, is still very undeveloped. And exactly the lot or the area that you're gonna see in the video is an area that I'm considering to keep it for commercial purposes. As I mentioned a little bit earlier to Jesse, that these areas are where the nicest urbanizations are. Therefore, the purchase power of people in these areas are very high. So offering good services, let's say restaurants, coffee shops, movie theaters, or all kind of entertainment services will be very good, because what I can foresee at the moment is that this area will become a kind of satellite area of Manta, because you already have the urbanizations there. What we are not having at the moment is our services like supermarkets and the services that I already mentioned. And therefore, this will be a good opportunity for offering what these areas are lacking at the moment.
Yeah, and it's right above one of the more popular, I think probably the most popular beach.
Yeah, San Mateo Beach.
Just outside of Manta. I mean, basically in Manta, but just outside the city. Literally maybe 3-4 minutes in a car or something.
Yes, very, very close
to Manta. Yeah.
In fact, people go jogging from Manta to that area. It's a very
there's a nice area for that. So so get in touch with us if you want to talk about that as well. We'll put you in touch with Dennis and you guys can chat. All right, anything else before we wrap up?
No, I'm very, I think I said what I wanted to say, and thank you guys for watching us, and thank you, Jesse, also for the opportunity.
Thanks for taking the time, Dennis. We appreciate it. Once again, Jesse Bayer, Abundant Living Ecuador, a real estate and development company located in the Loja, Vilcabamba region of Southern Ecuador. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up. Those are the same things. Share, subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff, and have a great day.
Bye.